Today on Letty Books, I want to talk about 13 of the coolest books coming out in November. I'm a little late with this video, and you will notice that there are only 13 on the list. I have included very large lists recently, like sprawling lists of 30 plus books. That was leading up to October spooky season, and that warrants a very big list. And I think going forward, every October, I'm going to want to do a big list like that, and maybe the month before. But specifically October, I think I want to always have a goal of 31. So we're going to flip that every other month and do just 13. It gives me a little more time to talk about these amazing covers, like the first book on the list, The Place Where They Buried Your Heart by Christina Henry. And this, starting out with a bang, a house on the cover of the book. You know, I love that. Some purples, a micro serif font that's quite bold and stark white. And it is a very typographic cover because the house itself, aside from being a Victorian, doesn't really lend a lot to the spookiness or whatever theme it is that we're going to discover in the description of this book. Now, of course, it is all about the font because it takes up a lot of it, right? A house on the cover, sometimes it doesn't even matter. And you'll see going on in some of the books that we're going to talk about today, the house can be even more nondescript. So, on an otherwise ordinary street in Chicago, there is a house, an abandoned house, where once upon a time terrible things happened. The children who live on this block are told by their parents to stay away from this house, but of course, children don't listen. Children think it's fun to be scared, to dare each other to go inside. I mean, I know I would. Jessie did what many older sisters do and dared her little brother Paul, but unlike the other kids who went inside that abandoned house, Paul didn't return. His two friends, Jake and Richie, said that the house ate Paul. Of course, that's probably what happened. Of course, adults didn't believe that. Adults never believe what kids say. The darkness seemed to spread from that house, a darkness that was alive and hungry. The description goes on from there, but it really does set a scene, doesn't it? I was just reading an interesting story about 30 years ago from Pickering, Ontario. It was 6 young boys went missing all at once in one night. Now, if that isn't fodder for nightmares, my God, one kid is bad enough. Imagine 6 venturing out at night and never coming back. That's crazy. So with that story, that real true story fresh in my mind, this seems even more intriguing. That was November 4th, and on November 7th, we continue on with crazy small town stuff and the kind of horror that really gets to me, that excites me about the horror genre, The Creed's Falls Massacres by John Cohn. And you'll notice the S, Massacres plural. So that intrigued me. Aside from this really interesting cover, now I don't really get what's going on here, but I like it. There's another cover later on that we'll talk about where I get what's going on, but I don't like it. This, on the other hand, I do like. It has this font that's very similar to a very popular font that I've used myself and many of us have seen, Another Danger. It is like the popular slasher font. I'll put an example of it on the screen, but you have seen it. It is like the quintessential popular modern slash font. It's a handwriting style of font, but yeah, it invokes horror and dread. There's a very different sort of that sort of font going on here. There's been many fonts. Sometimes people create them. They're not fonts at all. Like, this is graphic design. They're letter forms, they would call them. And I'm not sure if this is a font or letter forms, but yeah, the Creed Falls Massacre slashed in white and red across the bottom, the author's name in just a normal serif, and it shows the camp, and it has even more text of the welcome to Creed Falls camp. And inside of this area, it has a picture of the camp with a wooden sign saying welcome to Creed Falls camp, like very typical welcome to Crystal Lake kind of style camp welcome sign. I think every camp is by law required to have a wooden welcome sign, and it's all kind of surrounded by a fox head, which is interesting, and it does play into the description as I found out, but I wasn't sure what I was looking at first, if it's a wolf head, a fox head, and why. And it's sort of surrounded by this like crinkly shimmery black for no real reason. I don't really understand, but it does look vintage, it does look interesting, and it drew me in mostly because it's a camp. I love camp horror. There's not enough of it. So yeah, this very interesting camp scene leads to a town divided an unknowable evil. Actually, make that two evils. 17 years ago, a machete-wielding masked maniac known as the Silver Fox terrorized Camp Creed. Put a pin in that. I will talk about the real-life Silver Fox in a second. Killing 19 people on a night that became infamous as the Creed Falls Massacre. His bloody rampage ended when a final girl, Jamie Campbell, fought back. At least that's how Jamie tells it. A strange meteor crashes on the outskirts of town, transforming townsfolk into hideous, mutated monsters. Meanwhile, an old foe is somehow resurrected at the site of the old campground, the Silver Fox. There is a big chunk of summary missing in there, but I didn't want to really get into Jamie's story and Jamie's future and Jamie's plight. That is for us all to find out when we read this book, right? That's what I figured. But it's more interesting to me that not only is there the meteor streaking in the sky, which I forgot to mention is also on the cover, a very John Carpenter thing to do, I believe. I really did enjoy that this is not just the one massacre story, it's the story of something even more cosmic happening later on. Did I say John Carpenter? I meant Steven Spielberg, who often puts comets in the sky in his films. But this would be kind of like John Carpenter meets Steven Spielberg in the way that this story is coming across in the summary. Now, the real-life Silver Fox is a sordid tale from Toronto. He's a serial killer that targeted mainly gay men and, of course, the less dead. He targeted a lot of immigrant men, especially gay immigrants. So terrible, terrible human being. Aside from just being a serial killing murderer, he was a alluring person who would groom his victims. He was terrible. And there were people who escaped his clutches by a hair. He used the term Silver Fox as a handle on dating apps, and a true crime podcaster and author, Dr. Leigh Mellor, used it as sort of the moniker for that particular serial killer, and it always stuck with me. So when people say that so-and-so is a silver fox, if they're talking about a man or an actor that is older that has silver or gray or white hair, I think, unfortunately, of Bruce McArthur. So this, even though it's nothing to do with that, it sort of reminded me, they have pretty high body counts. They're probably just both macabre, terrible, hateable individuals as far as serial killers go. But that is a pretty neat nickname, if you're going to need a neat nickname for a killer. Incidentally, I thought that Red X, which did tangentially have to do with the Bruce McArthur murders, I thought it would have more to do with being a gay man in Toronto at that time, and it just didn't have the sort of angle I was hoping for from that particular book. I recommend it. I didn't like it, but I do recommend it if you're interested in that era and what it was like being in the village at that time. I'm waiting for a good fictionalization or docudrama or something of that particular story to come out. So on November 11th, we move on to something lighter, but not really, because these are all horror stories and there's nothing lighter to be had. Bones of Our Stars, Blood of Our World by Cullen Bunn. And this is a new author to me, although they are an award-winning and have other credits to their name. If you've ever read any Cullen Bunn, let me know, because I just never heard of this author before. Now, this is the book where I was talking about the house on the cover just kind of being super nondescript, and not nondescript in a Haunting of Velkwood kind of way, where it could be any house. It sort of is going for that vibe, although it could be like the suburbs out of the movie The Ring because of this particular greenish blue color, this cyanotype kind of color that they've gone with here. Bones of Our Stars, Blood of Our World. It has a longer title when you look on Amazon, but it's not one of those Kindlepreneur titles that I dislike so very much. This has this street scene in the suburbs at dusk, pictured through this green lens, and the left side sort of torn away like it's printed on paper, and there's more text in that torn area where it shows a field of stars at night. So it's very interesting. The text really dominates. It's got this red sans serif, so it's striking, but then rather plain when you look at it, because it's it's a normal kind of house, like a little bungalow with a light on in the window. Doesn't really tell you much about the story. The bodies are stacking up on Wilson Island. Now that tells you lots about the story, that first little line of this description. The town's sheriff has his suspicions, but no genuine evidence for an arrest, even as the murders continue and appear increasingly ritualistic in nature. So kind of True Detective-y I'm getting. And when an arrest is finally made, all hell breaks loose, literally, as a terrifying horror rises up to envelop the town. Soon it's all up to an unforgettable and motley group of residents to band together and eliminate an ancient evil in a desperate struggle for survival. Now, I don't know about you, but I have found, maybe it's as I age, or maybe it's something that I've loved all along, the motley group of residents, always unforgettable, an unforgettable group of motley residents. There's an unforgettable group of motley residents in a lot of Brian Keene's work. There's an unforgettable group of motley residents in a lot of Stephen King's work. There's an unforgettable group of motley residents in Ronald Malfi's work. And that is where I reminded myself, reading Snow by Ronald Malfi, that I love when people are forced to band together. I was reading Body of Water recently, and Body of Water has that same sort of unforgettable group of motley residents, and it worked. Don't get me wrong, it was a good read, but it didn't work the way like The Mist works, or Snow works, or Darkness on the Edge of Town works, where you get this like perfect synchronicity of people you would know. You feel you know these people, and that's the sort of thing that I'd hope from a book like this. So if you've read it, let me know. I'm very curious how this motley group of unforgettable residents pans out. Now, also on November 11th, we have something quite different. Howl, an anthology of werewolves from women in horror. So this is a really cool collection. I haven't seen enough werewolf stuff. A werewolf collection is been a long time coming. People ask for more werewolves all of the time, so here we are. So the cover is really plain. You know, some anthologies have a very descriptive and illuminating cover, and this is quite the opposite. It has Howl in sort of a scrawl, sort of chalk or marker font, and 3 red slashes that could be blood or lipstick. It really depends on how you look at it. But 4 slashes of red across the cover, and then just a very nice serif font for the rest of the text in white on black. And I think that text is Baskerville, one of my favorite serif fonts. It's got a little more weight, a little less to the thicks and thins as Times New Roman. It's far more readable to me, and I think it has a higher X height, but I don't really know the particulars. I just know I like it. And it reminds me of the Hound of the Baskervilles, like, don't get me wrong. From Angela Carter's The Company of Wolves to Rachel Harrison's Such Sharp Teeth, women have been dancing with the wolf and teasing it out of the woods for centuries. We feed the untamed, hoping to release the beast inside, giving us strength, sisterhood, and the confidence to howl. This is all nice because I need to watch The Company of Wolves again. We have a copy of it here and I love that movie, but we did just watch Trick or Treat, which is an annual Halloween thing here. And I remember ages ago, I didn't really like the werewolves in that movie, but I really like them now. The animal releases us from shame and permits us to seek out and accept our truth. With the wolf, we are free. With freedom, we are empowered. And that could be the motto for the werewolves in Trick or Treat, really. If you've not watched that movie, if you've avoided it for whatever reason, definitely watch it. It's not just all Sam in his little onesie slashing people with a lollipop. It's got a lot of cool little stories going on in there intertwined. From award-winning editors Stephanie M. Wytovich and Lindy Ryan comes Howl, a brand new anthology of original stories and poems from women of contemporary horror who give voices to wolves as they shed their skin, unhinge their jaws, and bare their teeth for all to see. Featuring Delilah S. Dawson, Gwendolyn Keist, Christina Henry, Ai Zhang, and many more, with an introduction by Rachel Harrison. Incidentally, Rachel Harrison is one of the upcoming guest of honor at the next HWA StokerCon in Pittsburgh next summer, I believe. I wish I could go. I'll think about it. I don't think I'll be there, but I do think I'll be there the next year in Pittsburgh. Speaking of women, we have The Chambermaids, also on November 11th by Leigh Hall. And the cover is, at first I was like, I don't know, it doesn't look like anything. But the more you look at it, the more fitting it becomes. It's a close-up of an ornate black damask, velvet, and lace corset with the lady's hand sort of on her hip. And she has a Victorian finger guard, a silver metal finger guard. And I guess these were for sewing. I'm not really sure. I've seen lots of thimbles in my time. I own some antique thimbles that were passed down, but nothing quite as cool and goth as this. But it's got this brush gold text that is like an italic serif font with kind of gothic flourishes, highly readable, a very nice cover. I like that it has this gothic charm of this very ornate corset, though. Wilbur and Eloise Saxton are forced to move after losing their fortune following the Civil War. Hot-headed Wilbur was not happy about the adjustment, but his wife is glad to finally return to their home state. At least she was until they arrive at home the late uncle left her and find it in much disrepair. It also comes with a dark secret, something her family hid from her for a good reason. When two strange women knock on their door offering to help the couple, claiming they know the land more than anyone else, those secrets unfold. While Eloise loses her mind, Wilbur is already lost under a spell cast by their young, charming chambermaids. What was supposed to be a dream come true is slowly turning into a nightmare, and I enjoy the premise of this. It's not like Haunted House, and I'm sure there's a lot of rot and haunt to go around in this estate, but it's these two weird witchy women, right? Very interesting and very fitting for the cold November. Now, this next book, also on November 11th, it does kind of remind me of a thriller, and the cover looks like it would be more of a thriller, but I couldn't pass it up, of course, because it does. I like these missing people stories. It's The Forest of Missing Girls, a novel by Nichelle Giraldes, and it just looks really cool. Typographically, it's got this stark yellow, thick sans serif font, which has been all the rage for the past year, and it's superimposed on top of very lush palm fronds. So there's not a lot going on the cover. It's palm fronds with yellow text, and the yellow text sort of is sinking in, has a few fronds of palm over top of it, and you see a hand coming out from the shadows. And that's all you really need. A little red text for the author's name. It's very, very succinct. It tells a bit of a story. I mean, this is The Forest of Missing Girls. Nevertheless, it's going to have a forest and what I suppose is the hand of a missing girl on the cover. But it's really effective. It's very striking, very simple. The sort of cover that has been very popular in thrillers for the past little while. The forest is hungry, and her family's secrets are tangled in the trees. Leah Gregg has always hoped to outgrow her fear of the woods surrounding her childhood home. The dark, menacing trees have long been the site of whispered legends and disappearances of girls like her. But after a breakup sends her back to live with her family, the woods feel more sinister than ever. Now, the woods can be sinister to kids, fear of the dark and all that, fear of the unknown, or being told to not go there and fed like fairy tales. But that kids actually go missing in there, girls like her, she has a leg to stand on. When a teenage girl disappears from their backyard, Leah's childhood fear becomes terrifyingly real. The missing girls are no longer just faces in the news. Now the danger is closer than she imagined, and her younger sister could be next. As Leah digs into the disappearances, she begins to suspect her mother knows more about the forest and the horrors within that she's letting on. To save her sister and uncover the truth, Leah must confront the secrets lurking in the trees and the darkness they conceal before it's too late. I like this. Maybe it's that crossover of thriller and horror that as I get older, I find a lot more palatable. I wish I had more time to read more thrillers that are horror adjacent. And I believe that this is where this book fits. If you've read it and you think that it is diehard horror, or if it's really just a thriller, let me know in the comments because I'm very curious. This next book, also on November 11th. November 11th is just a big day, it seems. There is no Anti-Mimetics Division, a novel by qntm. And I am very intrigued by this lack of story here that is about to be described. And the cover. The cover is this sunset oranges and dark burnt umbers forest setting. So it's a pine forest, the foothills of a pine forest in the mist or fog. And it's very pretty, very orange, very yellow, very plain, with this huge obelisk, this skyrise sized slab of maybe obsidian or some big rock jutting up. It dominates the whole cover. And using this sort of like cyberpunk font, just very plain white, very thin font. On the cover, it says there is no Anti-Mimetics Division, a novel by qntm. And qntm is spelled qntm. So it's super elite, super cyberpunk, right? But the font itself reminds me a lot of the Zodiac ciphers, if you know what I mean. You know, I'll put a picture of one of the Zodiac ciphers up, the long unsolved Zodiac cipher, although many of them have been solved and a lot of it has been cracked. There's some that are kind of unsolvable, probably because they're botched. Or at least that's the going theory. But that's what this font reminds me a lot of. And now for the description, which doesn't tell me a lot, but with imagination, maybe it does. They're all around us, hiding in plain sight. One could be in the room with you right now, just to your left. You could be seeing it right now, but from this second to the next, you'll forget that you did. If you manage to jot down on a note, the paper would look blank to you afterward. These entities can feed on your most cherished memories, the things that make you you, and you'll never even know anything has changed. They can turn you into a living ghost, make it so you're standing next to your spouse screaming in their ear and they won't know you're there. They're predators equipped with the ultimate camouflage, living black holes for information, able to consume our very memories of their existence. But they aren't just feeding on us, they're invading. But how can you fight an enemy with which you do not know you are even at war with? How do you contain something you can't record or remember? There is no Anti-Mimetics division. Very interesting. I don't know if that is their folly, like, darn, I wish there was an Anti-Mimetics division, or if they go to the Anti-Mimetics division and are told it does not exist. I'm very interested. There's this quantum author has other books. I have never read of them and never heard of them before, but if you have, if this is like John dies at the end, or if this is like Todd Kiesling-ish liminal man stuff, let me know. I'd be very interested. I'm very interested in this particular title. Finally, another day, November 18th, I'll Make a Spectacle of You by Beatrice, Winifred, Iker. And this particular cover rocks my world. It blows my hair back. It rocks my socks, maybe, as the kids would have said 20 years ago. But yeah, I don't know what they say. It slaps? The kids still say that? No, that's like very 15 years ago. Things shouldn't slap anymore, and they never should have in the first place. But this rocks. This is really cool. This is the sort of cover that I live for. It's got like gnarled roots growing into the shape of a skull underground, and it's like this creepy forest growing up above in a red light that is all shadowed and silhouetted with a black church in the shadows. And like, what more could you want? Like, do you want distressed white serif text? You got it. That's what's going on here. It is the coolest cover ever. I love this sort of cover, these folk horror things. And you know what? I don't even care if it's about folk horror or not. It looks like it's folk horror, and that sells, right? So yeah, I think it just looks wonderful. I don't even care what this book's about at this point, but I'll still read the description because I kind of do. Zora Robinson is an ambitious grad student in her dream program, Appalachian Studies, at Brixbury University. That sentence alone works for this cover, doesn't it? So it's not a bait and switch. When her thesis advisor hands her a strange diary and suggests she research the local folklore about a beast roaming the woods surrounding campus, Zora finds a community uneager to talk to an outsider. As she delves into the history of the beast, she uncovers a rumored secret society called the Keepers, who has a tenuous tie to the beast and Brixbury itself. It sounds kind of like the Wednesday story, right? Like of the show Wednesday. Zora soon finds herself plagued by visions of the past, and her grip on reality starts to slip as she struggles to uncover what is real and what is folklore. I'm having trouble pronouncing the word folklore today, but when a student goes missing, Zora starts to wonder if the Keepers ever really disbanded. I like this premise quite a bit. I worry that it is YA, but it does remind me also of the really cool nonfiction series, and this sort of segues into Nonfiction November, but the Foxfire books. I buy a set of Foxfire books, or some from the set of Foxfire books, for family members every Christmas. And this Christmas, spoiler alert, family is no exception. I'm going to get some more Foxfire books if I can find good ones. But yeah, if you've never heard of the Foxfire series of books, definitely check them out. They've gone into the hills and talked to hill folks in the 70s to gather knowledge that students in the high school in the cities or surrounding area had worried that they were losing because they didn't have grandparents that lived in the hills anymore. They had city folk grandparents. So they went to interview these people for a school project, and it turned into this book, Foxfire. And it had all these neat things like, I don't know, how to make a homemade guitar, how to cure hides, how to collect beeswax, important things, how to make wicker furniture, I don't know, all kinds of stuff. Making a cold cellar out of mud, I don't know, stuff like that. So it was so good they made another book and another and another. And I think there's like 15 or 20 Foxfire books. They're super cool. So if you're into not just, Appalachian studies or what people do as far as homesteading, the Foxfire books are really important, I think, in taking that information that is lost and locked within grandparents, perhaps, and capturing it for future generations. They did a really good job of that. So yeah, that's that segue. Maybe I'll pick up a Foxfire book for November. I'm going to be reading quite a few nonfiction books in November. And I don't want to spoil it by talking about it, but I have been listening to a lot of Last Podcast on the Left, and I had watched that Ed Gein series that was on Netflix. So that ties into some of my picks, or one of my picks for nonfiction November, as does just old true crime from back then. So yeah, little hint, I'll be doing nonfiction November quite loosely, because I do have a lot of projects coming up that are on this month, like speed drafting a novel. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on in Casa Lydia with Lydia's books. But that aside, nonfiction November will promise a whole bunch of really cool reading, I think. So yeah, looking forward to that. I'll have a video up talking about nonfiction November soon. I haven't seen a lot of other people doing it or talking about it. So if you're reading nonfiction for November, let me know in the comments, because I'm very interested to see what other people have been reading. I often read a nonfiction book alongside all the fiction reading, and I tend to not talk about them on the show for whatever reason. So I'll begin doing that after focusing on it for November. Speaking of November, we're still on November 18th. My Name Isn't Paul by Drew Huff. Now, this cover is interesting. It's got this chalk pastel rendition of a hand reaching up over a blue wood or something. And it's got something going on the edges, like kind of reality is unraveling in sort of like goopy tendrils of blue and black tar. I don't know really what's going on the edges. But there's a spot of blood for some reason on one of these tendrils. So something bad is happening. And we do have like some very stark, really intense yellow serif font that's very fat and bold, making up the title of the book on the cover that clashes really badly. Like blue and yellow are kind of naturally clashing, right? So it's a very intense looking cover for something that looks so mundane. It's a person's hand, right? But yeah, a cosmic horror novella, it says. He's a traveling salesman called Paul Cattaneo, except he isn't. He's a mirror person, a hyper-empathetic, eldritch abomination. He found the human Paul's mangled corpse 7 years ago and decided to mimic it. It's just what mirror people do. They mimic, they absorb, control. But breeding season for mirrored people comes around every 7 years, including a sociopathic state, and Paul's time is up. Unable to avoid the reality of what he truly is, Paul has a mental breakdown, goes on a cross-country road trip, and runs afoul of something far, far more inhuman and dangerous than himself. So I'm very interested in this body snatcher story. I like the cover quite a lot. It's really stark and strange, and it fits really well with that summary. It's a shame in a way that it's only a novella, because I think I could follow that sort of story for longer, but we'll see. Maybe it's a long novella. If you've heard of it, let me know. This is the first I'd heard of it when I was sort of perusing some of the HWA stuff and other lists of horror, and that one popped up. I don't think it was on like Amazon or Edelweiss or all the other places that I typically look. I'd stumbled upon it on some other list. Probably Jump Scares list of upcoming books, or it might have been the HWA list, but either way, I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. Nor this particular book, You Watched in Silence by H. Leigh Justine. Maybe I'm just out of the loop. This is also October 18th, and I like the cover, although it is sort of plain, and I feel with covers like this sometimes they could fit any genre. It's got this kind of eyeless blonde woman peering out from the shadows with a periwinkle bush, or at least what I think is a periwinkle bush, all green with the blue periwinkle flowers. She's sort of peering out from around that or behind it. It's somehow unsettling, probably the eyelessness. Thin white sans serif in all caps for the title, and it blends into the shadow and bushes as well. So it's really nice, but like I said, it could be for any genre. Caitlin believes her world is falling apart when her best friend cuts her off, until she gets a text message from the only person who can put it back together, family vlogger Bella Green, the celebrity influencer that she and her ex-best friend were obsessed with. She offers Caitlin a job taking care of her twins. Caitlin can't believe how easily she bonds with these twins. She also feels an instant connection with the family's flirtatious chef Hannah, who soon stirs romantic impulses in Caitlin. Like millions of other, Caitlin knows that Bella's life is in pieces too. Cancelled over perceived indifference to the tragic suicide by one of her fans, Bella fled with her family to a remote island off the coast of Washington. Very interesting because, family vloggers are, it's not all the rage to be a family vlogger, it's all the rage to be a family vlogger with troubles, it seems these days. Before she knows it, Caitlin descends into constant terror, unable to tell if she's losing her mind or being haunted by a past she'd rather forget. Worse, there is magic here, a dark force that manifests in mysterious pentagrams, animal sacrifices, and scrawled threats in Bella's backyard, increasingly close to her home. I had to read extra off of my phone because I didn't put the whole description in the thing here, and I don't know why, because I didn't feel that this really told enough of the story. It's not scary enough, and I don't know how much horror this really truly is, although it does come up on horror lists on Amazon. But yeah, I feel like I know the author name, Justine. I've seen that before. Maybe it's mostly thrillers. I don't really know, but I'm interested in this person being whisked off to a remote island to take care of twins for somebody who is under scrutiny in the public eye, with a missing friend who maybe turns up on this island. I don't know. So I'm very interested to hear more about this. I don't think it's one I would pick up, and I do have a bit of a trouble with the cover because, like I said, it could belong to any genre. I think that's part of a marketing thing of casting a very wide net so that maybe it'll pick up people from other genres with, looser expectations. I don't really know. But on November 20th, we have Threads of Fate by Aminah Fox, and this is one I haven't really heard much about elsewhere either. It has a very interesting but plain cover. There's a hand reaching down and a hand reaching up. They're grayish and they're mirrored, and the background is a swirly marble smoky red on black, very plain, with Threads of Fate in a very nice serif font in kind of like a coffee or toffee brown. Really plain, doesn't really tell you much about the book at all, but it was eye-catching graphically. Nearly 2 years after surviving the Milieu murders, a brutal killing spree that claimed her best friend's life, Manny is trying to move on. After taking an academic leave to heal, she's back at Millfield University, hoping to rebuild her life. When another student is found dead in the same horrific fashion as the murders that once terrorized them on campus, rumors of the killer's return begin to spread, and Manny is forced to confront the chilling reality. The nightmare isn't over, it's just begun. With the administration determined to turn a blind eye, Manny launches her own investigation, only to discover something far darker than what she could have imagined. It's not a serial killer on the loose. It's something centuries old and powerful that dates back to the university's founding, a malevolent entity preying on students, growing stronger and stronger every time it feeds. So it's like dark academia. I wish the cover had more to tell. A few videos ago, new release videos ago, I talked about horror and dark academia melding as a more adult take on dark academia, but the cover is still retaining that sort of YA, or not middle grade, but like an older YA maybe, gilt edges sort of look, looking like dark academia. This book doesn't really look like that. So I'm curious, I'm interested. If you're going to read Threads of Fate, if you're interested in dark academia, usually that's a September thing, so it's kind of an odd time for it to be released if that's really what it is, or if it just happens to take place in university. I'm interested though. I'm also interested in this next one, but I don't know, man. November 21st holds The Sofa by Sam Munson. It's got a cover that you can smell, or I can smell. Maybe you have to be a child of the 70s to be able to smell this cover. It's got this pink text that is, it's similar to like Abril Fat Face or something. It's a big, groovy, fat, chunky serif font, and it's in eraser pink. It is like school eraser pink, Faber-Castell eraser pink, and I can just smell those erasers. And it's sort of printed on a blue that is like a mimeograph ink blue, which had a very distinct smell. Well before photocopiers, we had mimeographs, and in schools they would often mimeograph this hideous blue ink onto pink paper. So it was like, it's very, very school, very 1982 kind of thing. Maybe it was that my school was older and a little more rural that we used these sorts of things, but the erasers, nevertheless, it's this pink color. You could say it's bubblegum pink, but with the mimeograph blue, I'm likening it to erasers. So that's enough about school supplies in the late 70s. The cover is a clip art dude on a clip art couch with a clip art hand over his face, and it's okay, there's a hole in the hand so we can see a clip art eye. It's just very, I don't know, it's weird. It's like stock photography run amok, and it's all black and white. So it's a really weird, disjointed, unsettling looking cover, and again, a cover that I can't really discern the genre. So Mr. Montessori and his family return home from a trip to the beach to discover their sofa is different. Once dark and contemporary, it's now antique, green and yellow, and smelling faintly of damp. Its appearance and origins are a mystery. A joke? An inverted theft? A break in the fabric of reality? Yes, the police take the crime seriously. But what happens next lies outside their expertise. Strange sounds in the night, a half-bathroom toilet with a mind of its own, odd fleeting glimpses of something or someone in the mirrors, the inexplicable vision of Montessori's neighbor. He swears he saw a burglar. Okay, I don't care about the burglar now at this point. I want to know about the sofa. Yeah, my grandma had one of those weird sofas that is like green and gold, and it had like the wood back thing, and it had like a hunting scene on the fabric. It was very strange. So I'm semi-interested in the sofa. I'm sort of scared of the sofa, and I don't know what it's going to smell like, if you can follow me. Older listeners and viewers will fully understand the smells of those colors. Mimeograph paper. Ugh. Wow. November 25th, the last book of the 13, The Lucky 13, The Villa Once Beloved, by Victor Manibo. And this cover, I don't know. I don't really like this cover. And we have this villa on the front with many windows, and it's got Juliet balconies outside of these windows. Those are those balconies that are only about half a foot wide, and they don't really like jut out. They're just there for protection. If you can open the window at all, they're not to step out on and do anything with. There's vaulted passages on the ground floor underneath, so it looks like this building doesn't really have any entrances. It's very strange looking. So it is kind of in a yellowish gold, and there's palm trees around it that are sort of in a negative color, black and white maybe, but a negative, and then it's mirrored below in a negative relief. So it doesn't really tell you much, except it's got the villa once beloved pictured on the front, but the text is also in this goldish color, which is kind of like a goldenrod color. It's not light enough to be called gold technically, and it's not yellow or brown. It's somewhere in between there, a murky color of gold, but it's just on this blackish blob. Now, if it was smoke or dark black feathers or more palm fronds but blackened, something that would tell a story, that would be interesting to me. But that it's just this black blob, it's just, it could have been served better by having a cloud or smoke or something instead of just the black that doesn't make sense. Villa Superverde is a storied relic of the Philippines' past, a Spanish colonial manor. Its moldering stonework filled with centuries-old heirlooms, nestled in a remote coconut plantation. When their patriarch dies mysteriously, his far-flung family returns to their ancestral home. Filipino-American student Adrian Supervelde invites his college girlfriend, Sophie, the transracial adoptee, who knows very little about her own Filipino heritage, to the funeral of a man who is entwined with the history of the country itself. That is very interesting to me. I wish this had a better cover. I don't know if that goldish color or the reversal of colors plays within the story. I know that the black blob of nothing doesn't, probably. If it's just going to personify darkness, there's a better way to go about that too. So I really wish, of all the books that I've said today have covers that maybe don't work with the genre or could work with any genre, or don't tell you much about the story, or don't tell the story themselves, this one I really wish had a better cover. But as you know, as I know, as we all know, many books get different covers for different reasons, whether it's a translation, the hardcover and the paperback, another edition. I've had 5 different covers for my first book, Night Face. So yes, every book has many different covers. I really hope that this one wins a different cover sometime that tells a little bit more about it, because I am quite interested in Filipino haunted house horror. That's cool. Haunted plantations, they could have used a weird coconut ash on the front. That would have been really cool, because coconut does turn into a very dark charcoal. But yeah, that aside, sounds very interesting. So if you're interested in Filipino coconut grove horror, haunted mansions and such, we've had a lot of books today with houses on the cover. And I always say how this yellow text is the new thing, yellow on blue or things like that. Sans serif, big, loud, bold text. Houses on the cover are always a mainstay in horror, and there just happens to be a whole bunch of them this month. It's not that I cherry-picked books with houses on the cover by any means. There were less books coming out this month that were of interest, but yes, I'm definitely going to be sticking with this list of 13 because it gives me a lot more time to talk about things that are intrinsic to the stories, little tangents that are related to the summaries or the covers themselves, and talk about the fonts and the colors and what's going on in this design. So yes, thank you so much for watching today. If you're going to pick up any of these books, or if you think there's something on this list that I ought to be reading, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and have an spooky day.